Sorry, sweetheart, this table's for family only. That was the first thing my mother said to me as I stepped into the restaurant, a folded linen napkin still clutched in her perfectly manicured hand. I blinked, confused, as my eyes scanned the table, round, gleaming, and full. My father was already mid-toast, raising his glass toward my sister Ivy, who beamed under the glow of a chandelier. My brother Nathan didn't even glance my way. The only empty chair had a jacket draped over it, claimed, of course. A waiter pointed toward the back of the room. "Miss, we've set an extra seat for you." The seat? It was beside the kitchen door. Metal. Wobbly. Parked right next to the trash bin. I stood frozen. I was dressed in the nicest black dress I owned, hair curled, shoes scuffed from walking 2 blocks in the rain to get here. I looked at Mom again. She tilted her head and said, "Well, don't just stand there. Sit. You're late." I was 5 minutes late, I replied, my voice quieter than I intended. Well, punctuality matters. Especially tonight. Ivy laughed into her wine glass. Maybe she got lost on the way to her own apology. Apology? I felt the eyes of the room, the carefully dressed relatives, the expensive flatware catching the light. No one moved. No one offered a chair. Not even Dad. So I walked over to the metal chair and sat. Quietly. My heart thudding in my chest. No menu. No greeting. Just a view of the kitchen door swinging open every 30 seconds, flooding me with the smell of bleach and food scraps. I folded my hands in my lap and told myself not to cry. Not yet. I didn't know it then, but that chair, the one they thought would humiliate me, was the beginning of everything they couldn't take back. I didn't touch the breadbasket. Or the wine. Or the overpriced appetizers they'd ordered without asking me. From the corner of my eye, I watched Nathan pull out his phone, showing off photos of his new condo. Ivy squealed, "Oh my God, you have a balcony and a wine fridge?" My mother laughed softly. We always knew he'd be the one to really make something of himself. I clenched my fingers in my lap. Then came the moment I'd been bracing for. "So, Ria," Dad said casually, as if suddenly remembering I existed. "What are you doing these days?" Before I could answer, Ivy leaned across the table, grinning. "Still doing that little house hustle thing?" "What is it again?" "Flipping trailers?" "It's called property development," I replied, voice steady. "And no, not trailers. I've actually opened a boutique firm." A beat of silence. Then my mother smirked. "Well, as long as you're not expecting us to invest." I smiled tightly. "I'm not." The waiter returned with the check, tucked in a leather folder with a handwritten note, gratuity included for parties of 8 or more. Without missing a beat, my mother pointed directly at me. "She's got it." The entire table turned to look at me, expectant. $4,600. That's when I understood something. This wasn't just a dinner. This was a reminder. A ritual. One I was no longer willing to perform. I stood slowly, pushed back my chair, and said calmly, "This isn't my table." Silence. I wasn't invited to sit with family. I was seated by the trash. So I won't be footing the bill for a celebration I was never really a part of. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just left. My heels echoing against the marble, my heart pounding, but not from shame. From freedom. Because for the first time in my life, I'd walked away on my terms. I didn't go home that night. I drove. 4 hours. Past sleeping neighborhoods and gas stations with flickering signs, until the city lights gave way to quiet. Eventually, I pulled into a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. The kind with sticky menus and waitresses who call you honey without needing to know your name. I ordered black coffee and a slice of pie I barely touched. My phone buzzed with a message from Ivy. "Wow. Real mature, Ria." followed by a group chat ping from Mom. We don't walk out on family. Especially when the check's due. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed one sentence. This is where it ends. Then I started listing everything I had paid for in the last 3 years. Ivy's bachelorette weekend, $1 $200. Nathan's emergency dental bill, $800. Mom's accidental Amazon charges on my account, $327.61. I had proof. Bank statements. Receipts. Texts that started with Ria, could you, and ended with silence after I said yes. They thought I was the fool. But I was the ledger. And I was done being the overdraft. By sunrise, I had drafted an email with every receipt attached. Subject line. Not your wallet. Not your doormat. I hit send without trembling. Because I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. And I finally understood, I'd never get an apology from people who didn't believe they'd done anything wrong. But I could leave them with a record. One they couldn't ignore. The email went out at 6:17 a.m. My heart didn't race when I clicked send. It was steady, like I'd just set down a heavy suitcase I didn't realize I'd been carrying since childhood. For a while, nothing happened. No calls. No angry replies. Just silence. But silence has a weight. A thickness. Especially when it comes from people who once filled your ears with instructions, judgments, expectations. I went home. Showered. Pulled my hair back. And got dressed for a meeting I had no intention of canceling. Business was the only place where I didn't feel like I had to justify my worth. In real estate, results spoke louder than family history. And my numbers? They were speaking fluently. At 9 a.m., I walked into the high-rise where my firm shared an office space. Amy, my assistant, looked up from her desk and smiled. You okay? She asked gently. I hesitated. I am now. The morning passed in contracts and phone calls, but sometime around noon, I saw it, my phone screen lighting up with a familiar name, Mom. I stared at it, letting it ring. Then another. Nathan. Then Dad. Still, I didn't answer. Because I had nothing left to explain. Instead, I opened a new folder on my laptop. Labeled it Boundary Documents. Inside, I dragged every receipt, every email thread, every screenshot of transactions they'd conveniently forgotten but I had never deleted. This wasn't spite. This was clarity. At 2:14 p.m., a single message came through from Ivy. You've embarrassed the family. Hope it was worth it. I stared at those words longer than I should have. Embarrassed the family. Funny how the truth always sounded like betrayal when it finally got loud. I was about to delete the message when another one followed. Also, Mom said you sent a bill? Seriously? Over a few favors? Favors. Is that what they called it? Paying for their lives while they treated mine like an afterthought? I didn't respond. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and listened to the city breathe. From my fourth-floor apartment, I could see a sliver of skyline, the blinking lights of a city that didn't know my name, but respected my hustle. I had built this. Alone. They hadn't seen me, but this view did. It wasn't long before the tone began to shift. First came a voicemail from Mom. Ria, darling, can we talk? This is getting out of hand. Then one from Dad. We need to sort this out. Family doesn't air dirty laundry. But I hadn't aired anything. I had merely stopped carrying the basket. That weekend, I drove past the restaurant where it all happened. It looked different in daylight. Less glamorous. Just a building. Just a night. And I thought about that chair, the one they had assigned me, beside the trash can, like I was disposable. I wondered if they remembered the look on my face. I wondered if it haunted them the way their laughter echoed in my memory. Probably not. People like that don't replay scenes unless they're the star. Back home, I received one more message, this time from an unknown number. A single line. You were always the strong one. We took advantage of that. I'm sorry. No name. But I knew who it was. My older cousin, the only one who once whispered to me at a Christmas party, "You're going to outgrow all of them." I stared at the message. Then, slowly, I typed back. I already have. And hit send. Because this wasn't about them anymore. This was about reclaiming space. The space I had always been denied. At the table. In their stories. In their priorities. I wasn't the helper anymore. I wasn't the seat by the trash. I was the woman who got up and didn't look back. The morning of Ivy's bridal shower came with an invitation I hadn't expected, a formal, glossy envelope with my name spelled correctly for once. A note inside read. We would love to see you there. Let's put things behind us. Mom. The handwriting was soft. Contrite, even. But I didn't believe in rewritten scripts without acknowledgments of the original plot. Still, I RSVP'd yes. Not for them. For me. I needed to see their faces when I walked in, not begging, not placating, but as a woman they hadn't yet met, the one who wasn't afraid to take up space. I arrived 10 minutes early. Not late this time. I wore a navy jumpsuit, tailored and sharp, paired with quiet gold earrings and a new confidence I had stitched together piece by piece. The venue was a private room in a country club Ivy adored, white drapes, pastel balloons, champagne already flowing. I stepped through the doors, and for a moment, no one noticed. Then Ivy turned. Her eyes widened. "Oh," she said flatly. "You came." I did. She looked behind me, as if expecting someone better to walk through. "You didn't bring a plus one?" "No," I said simply, "I didn't need one." My mother floated over moments later, arms stretched, that same brittle smile on her lips. "Ria, sweetheart. So glad you could make it." She reached in to kiss my cheek. I tilted slightly, letting her graze the air instead. "Thank you for the invitation," I said, voice even. There was no apology. Just performance. I sat at the far end of the table, alone at first, until one of Ivy's co-workers, a kind-eyed girl named Danny, chose the seat beside me. "You're the sister, right?" she asked with a grin. "Ivy's told me, well, not much." I smiled. "That sounds about right." The room was a blur of tulle and curated laughter. Ivy opened gifts with exaggerated gasps, posed for photos with practiced angles, thanked everyone by name, except me. When she got to the silver box I'd placed on the table, she lifted it slowly. "From Ria," she said, eyebrows raised. She unwrapped it to find a framed photo of the three of us, me, Ivy, and Nathan, at a summer picnic, maybe ages 7 through 10. Ivy's hair was tangled in a ribbon. Nathan had frosting on his nose. I was holding the camera remote, smiling shyly. Beneath the photo was a single note. Before the lines were drawn. She looked at me sharply. "Cute," she said with a fake laugh, and moved on. But I saw the tremor in her hand. After the cake was served, the room thinned out. I made my way toward the coat rack, intent on leaving quietly. But then Mom followed me. "Ria," she said, her voice low. "What are you doing?" I was leaving. She glanced around nervously. "You don't need to keep making statements." "I'm not," I replied. "I'm making peace. Mine. Not yours." She sighed. "We've moved past that night. It's time you did too." That's when I turned. "You never apologized. Not for the chair. Not for the bill. Not for pretending I was only part of this family when it was convenient." Her jaw tensed. You're being dramatic. No, I said calmly, I was dramatic when I cried in the car afterward. This is just clarity. For a moment, her expression cracked. Not guilt, resentment. Because I wasn't playing my part. Why are you really here? She asked. I smiled softly. To remind myself I survived it. And to make sure I never mistake a chair at the table for a place in their hearts again. I walked away before she could respond. In the parking lot, I sat in my car with the door still open, letting the cool air hit my face. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. This wasn't revenge. It was rehearsal. For the next time someone tried to shrink me. Because that night at the restaurant hadn't broken me. It had shown me how to build better. And I wasn't done building yet. A week after the bridal shower, I got a call from my father. He never called. He barely texted. So when his name appeared on my screen, I stared at it for a while before answering. Ria, he said, his voice too casual. Thought we should talk. I waited. He didn't like silence. Never had. I heard about the bridal shower, he continued. Your mother said there was a moment. I let out a soft breath. Is that what we're calling it now? He ignored the question. I think it's time we clear the air. Come by Sunday. Dinner. Just us. I almost said no. But something about the tone in his voice told me this wasn't a peace offering. It was a performance. And I wanted a front row seat. His house looked the same, pristine lawn, perfect shutters, the same faded welcome mat that had never quite felt sincere. I parked at the curb, walked up the driveway, and knocked. He opened the door, a dish towel over one shoulder like some kind of domestic metal. Come in. Food's just about ready. I stepped inside and was instantly hit with the smell of roast chicken and lemon. The meal he used to make on holidays, back when I was still allowed at the main table. He gestured to the dining room. The table was set for two. I sat down carefully. He poured wine into a glass, then handed it to me. To family, he said. I didn't raise my glass. I just looked at him. You know, he began, sitting across from me, your mother and I, we've been talking. And we realized maybe we've been hard on you. I tilted my head. You think? He smiled, the tight-lipped kind that didn't reach his eyes. We're old school. We expect a lot. We thought tough love was the way. Tough love doesn't come with itemized bills I had to pay off in silence. He flinched. Just a flicker. But I saw it. We're willing to move past it, he said. If you are. My eyebrows rose. Move past what, exactly? The miscommunication, he said. That night at the restaurant, the tension at Ivy's shower. None of it was meant to hurt you. But it did. He didn't answer. And now that I've stopped letting it slide, I said softly, you want to pretend it was a misunderstanding. It's better than carrying a grudge. I smiled then. Cold and clean. I'm not carrying a grudge, I said. I'm carrying the truth. He exhaled. Look, Ria. Ivy's wedding is coming up. Your mother thinks it would be good for the family if we showed unity. That means no drama, no tension. So this dinner, I said, leaning back, wasn't about closure. It was a preemptive damage control meeting. He hesitated. And that was all the answer I needed. Tell Mom, I said, standing, that I won't cause drama. I won't ruin Ivy's day. But don't expect a speech. Don't expect a smile. I picked up my coat. You don't get to stage forgiveness just because the photos are coming. Ria, he said, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Oh, I won't, I replied, reaching for the door. Because I've already done the hard part. He frowned. Learning to stop needing anything from you. Then I walked out. And for once, he didn't follow. That night, I wrote a letter. Not for them. For me. I tucked it into a folder labeled rehearsal notes, right next to the receipts and the RSVP email I hadn't answered yet. The letter began with, "You don't have to sit at a table to know you've outgrown it." And I slept soundly, for the first time in weeks. Because I hadn't lost my family. They had lost me. I arrived at Ivy's wedding exactly 3 minutes before the ceremony began. Just enough time to avoid the family photos. The venue was immaculate, ivory roses, tall candles, string quartet playing the kind of music people pretend to like. Every detail screamed curated perfection. And yet, as I walked in, heads turned, not because I was late, but because I was unexpected. My dress was navy. Theirs were pastel. My expression calm. Theirs rehearsed. I sat quietly in the third row, behind extended cousins and distant relatives. Not once did someone ask why I wasn't up front. They knew. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged. Ivy beamed. Our mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief she probably bought just for this day. I didn't cry. I'd already done that, alone, unpaid, and uninvited. When they announced the bride and groom, applause erupted. I clapped once, softly, then folded my hands in my lap. The reception was louder, champagne fountains, choreographed dances, staged laughter. I stayed long enough to eat. Long enough to be seen. But not long enough to be used. Ivy found me near the dessert table. "You made it," she said, her smile brittle as the fondant. I did. She looked around, lowered her voice. I meant what I said. It's just paperwork. You made it a thing. I made it the truth. Her eyes flashed. You embarrassed us. No, I said gently, you did that all on your own. I just stopped cleaning it up. She didn't respond. Just stood there, watching me like she was seeing something unfamiliar. I stepped away before she could find something to say that sounded like love but landed like blame. I didn't take any pictures. But I'll never forget what I saw. A perfectly posed family portrait. Missing something real. A month after the wedding, a letter arrived. Thick envelope. Gold embossing. From a law firm. At first, I thought it was another attempt to shame me into silence. But when I opened it, my breath caught. It was from my grandfather's estate. He had passed away the year before, quiet and kind to the end. The only person in my family who ever sent handwritten birthday cards. The only one who once told me, you don't have to be loud to matter. He'd left me something. A lake house. Small. Old. But paid off and tucked away in a town no one in my family ever bothered to visit. And a letter, written by hand. Ria, if you're reading this, it means I saw you. Even when they didn't. This house is yours. No one else knows about it. It's yours because you never asked for much, and still gave more than anyone. Use it for peace. Or power. Or both. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I packed a bag. The lake house was perfect. Peeling paint. Worn wood floors. A porch swing that creaked. But it was mine. And in that silence, without needing permission, I breathed deeper than I had in years. 6 months passed. I didn't call. They didn't either. Then one day, a voicemail from my mother. Hi, sweetheart. We were wondering if you'd come for Thanksgiving. Ivy and Nathan will be there. We miss you. Missed me. I sat with that for a moment. Rolled it over like a stone. Then I drove to the lake house, opened a bottle of wine, and wrote back. Thank you for the invitation. I won't be attending. I've created a home where I don't sit by the trash can anymore. I hope your holiday is warm. I hope the food is good. And I hope one day, you realize love shouldn't be given based on usefulness. Until then, I'll stay where I'm valued. I printed it. Folded it neatly. Sent it in the mail. No email. No voicemail. Just paper. Like the one they once handed me with a $4,600 bill. This was mine. A year later, I hosted Thanksgiving for the first time. Not for them. For friends. For Amy from work, whose family lived overseas. For Danny, Ivy's old coworker, who'd sent a quiet thank you note after the bridal shower. For neighbors. Strangers turned into chosen kin. The table was small. Mismatched plates. Candles from the grocery store. But every seat was filled. Every face glowed. No one was left near the trash. No one was forgotten. After dinner, as we laughed over pie that was slightly burnt, Danny leaned over and said, "You've built something really special." I smiled, blinking back the kind of tears that didn't sting. "I didn't build it alone," I said. "I just stopped sitting at tables where I wasn't fed." Because the thing about betrayal is, it teaches you where not to go back. And the thing about being pushed aside? It gives you the space to rise. Not in revenge. But in quiet, steady, undeniable joy.